welcome to today's B2B Roundtable Podcast. This is Brian Carroll, and I'm really excited to bring our guest to you today. His name is Mark Organ, and Mark is the founder and CEO of Influitive. And I met Mark when he founded Eloqua, and he's been a thought leader in the space of sales and marketing technology, a real innovator. And so really excited to bring his thinking to you. And Mark, could you just tell us a little bit about your background and what inspired you to start Influitive?
Yeah, thanks. I'm really excited to be here, Brian. I think this is an amazing podcast and excited to share my story. So I've lived a number of lives already. One of them before I started Eloqua in 2000 was as a research scientist. I was actually a PhD candidate in neuroscience at Northwestern University in Chicago. Really fascinated then by how the brain works and what were the kind of biological basis of behavior. It's very interesting for me. And although research, while fascinating, has a number of challenges with respect to especially getting paid well and also wanted to be together with my now wife again. So I left the research world to get into business and joined Bain & Company as a management consultant. And from there, I started Eloqua. But the other big thread in my life, other than being a scientist, was being an entrepreneur. And I started companies even as a teenager, as far back as being 13. So I've always been really fascinated with working for myself and satisfying customers. So really, I think now I'm bringing both of those to bear in my company, where I still feel like I'm a scientist. I still feel like I'm trying to discover what makes human beings really work and tick, but also being an entrepreneur and building software for marketers, leveraging this understanding of people and what drives them. So in terms of what motivated me to start Influitive, and Influitive is an advocate marketing software company. So we believe that the future belongs to companies who, as opposed to marketing directly, they do a better job of discovering and nurturing and mobilizing their customers to do the marketing for them. We think the future is for companies to get their customers to do the sales and marketing for them. And so we built some software for discovering, nurturing, mobilizing advocates. But I got the idea while I was at Eloqua. It was actually 2005, and a great VC convinced me to spend a couple weeks, out in the field to understand how and why people bought my software. And what I learned was, when we sold software efficiently, it's because there was tons of this advocacy involved. There was multiple referrals on the way in. There was lots of case studies that were relevant on the website, the best references, and those prospects bought very quickly. At the time, Eloqua was a bootstrap startup, so selling things quickly was super, super important. And so I got really excited about this idea of advocacy, but it turns out it was way harder than I thought to generate consistent advocacy. And that's because we didn't truly understand what motivated advocates. I really wanted to understand that better. And through some interviews and lots of other things like that, I began to understand what drove advocacy. And fortunately, I couldn't work on that at the time while I was at Eloqua, but when I had a chance to transition out, I had an opportunity to work on Influitive at that point.
Well, that's really cool. And just hearing how you brought together the two worlds, from being the scientist to understand what motivates people, along with, and then putting it in a way that you're able to help people. And I'd love to hear some of the lessons you've learned about building a company where really from the beginning, the customer is at the heart of your business model.
Yeah. So, wow. I mean, I've learned a lot in terms of how to build a company. One of them, in terms of putting customers at the heart of your business model, one of the things actually I learned the hard way coming from Eloqua was how important the employee experience is. So I think one of the big differences between the two companies is that while I was at Eloqua, I was very obsessed with what we call our true north, which is measurable value for the customer. And that's a pretty good thing to obsess about. If you're making your customer money every day, you're likely to have some success. But one big change that I made at Influitive was really treating my employees as my primary customer and making sure that I was providing the best possible experience for them and lots of fundamental value for them. So that's one of the things that I learned. And I think more than ever, honestly, like if you think about it, there's so much capital out there, right? Like there's so much money that's available for companies if you can generate the growth and if you can generate an efficient business model. And the people who generate that efficient business model and that growth are people. Talent is a scarce resource today. So that's a big fundamental shift for me. And honestly, I think it mirrors a fundamental shift even in the marketplace. I think that today, companies, if they don't treat their employees as their primary customer, I think that the future is not going to look too bright for them. So that's one key thing that I learned in terms of building a company. In terms of the stuff that I learned that has informed the way we built our software, like the kinds of knowledge that I gained from interviewing literally hundreds of super advocates, like to understand these people who, they might generate several referrals a quarter and be available for references on demand and love to speak on stage for you, and all those things, all those acts of advocacy that all of us really depend on. Like none of us could build a successful business without having our customers who are doing that sales and marketing for us. We wouldn't be able to have our lifetime value of the customer and the cost of customer acquisition would be completely out of whack if we didn't have that working in our favor. So there were some things that I've learned about that. And so on the macro level, there are three things that I've learned are really important. And the first was that people advocate more when they feel like they're part of an exclusive tribe. Like when they belong to something that's bigger than themselves, then that's when you see a lot more advocacy. For example, you can see that at a sporting event. When you go to your local stadium, you'll find people whose faces are painted, in the colors of the team. Like, why do they do that? Well, they do that because they want to belong to something that's bigger. They want to be part of this exclusive tribe. So that's what we found when companies do advocacy programs. They can give it the right name and the right feel and the right brand and really make people feel like they're special and exclusive. You get a lot more advocacy. So that's the first thing. The second thing that we learned is that people want to be able to experience the impact that they made on a company. So, and I learned this firsthand when it's part of my sort of foundational learning for starting my company, is that when I left Eloqua, one of the things that I was excited to do was learning Chinese. I learned to speak Mandarin Chinese. I thought it'd be a cool thing to do. And unlike the 4 years of university Italian that I took, which didn't really amount to much in terms of my ability to speak Italian, I learned to speak enough Chinese with this amazing product that after 6 months, I was able to have a meeting in China without an interpreter. It was a pretty amazing experience. I used a product called ChinesePod.com. Amazing.
Wow.
And what I found was that, but you can see now I'm still advocating for it. But what I found was that my advocacy really waned over time, and it's because I wasn't really feeling the impact I was making on the company. I didn't know what the results were of the referrals that I made, as an example. And so one of the things that we've learned is, human beings all need feedback, and when you give them feedback, they respond better. And the same thing is true with advocates. So if you let people know the impact of those referrals that they've made, if you let people know if they've written a guest blog post or they've been on a podcast just like this, how many hits did that podcast get? Did they get thumbs up? Those sorts of things generate a lot more advocacy because people are getting that feedback. And the third thing is social capital. So people are experiencing benefits in their life, their career, as a result of the advocacy they're making. They're going to do a lot more of that. So those are three sort of social psychological things that I learned is really important to generate a lot of advocacy. And then at a more micro level, it's making it easy, making it fun, making it more rewarding. All the things that, for example, like a lot of great games do that. They build things to make it more addictive. All work. So we've bottled all of that and we put that into our product so that you've got the exclusive tribe, that people are getting feedback, that they're getting social capital, and then we make it gamified and fun so that people want to come back in again and again. And it really works. We've now got to the point where now I think that we're building something that is going to become a new standard for how companies go to market by putting their customers at the heart of the way they go to market.
That's really cool. So as I'm listening, just in terms of your own experience, but also from the research, how important are customer advocates? And, why should we either create or be more involved in their community?
Yeah, well, here's one of the things that I've seen, especially lately, and maybe it's because I'm running a company that's all about advocacy, but, the industry leaders in almost every sector are also the advocacy leaders. Like, for example, Tesla and cars. Like, Tesla's market cap is, equivalent to, I think, almost all the other car companies combined at this point. They're very close to it. I'm like, why is that? And they're also the advocacy leader, right? They don't have any commissioned salespeople. They don't do traditional marketing. Like, all their marketing and sales, or all their marketing, is done really through their own customers. And the impact of that is just incredible, right? Because you've got this large unpaid sales force that's way more effective than any sales force could be that you hire.
Right.
You don't have to pay them anything, and they're more effective. But that's just the beginning, right? And the other thing that we've learned is that advocacy is kind of like a positive virus. It's a beneficial virus. So a company that's built with advocacy, that has a lot of advocacy, those customers that become a new customer because of an advocate recommended them, they themselves are much more likely to advocate. Essentially, there's a culture of advocacy around these companies. And so these companies rocket up to being their industry leaders. They're so much more efficient in terms of their sales and marketing. And they've got this culture that keeps this sort of positive feedback loop happening, which I think is really exciting. And we see that with a lot of our customers are the industry leaders. Whether they're startups that, so many of our startup customers have gone public, whether that's MuleSoft or Okta, so many of them that have gone public, or they're industry leaders like Oracle or Salesforce, IBM. And I think a lot of them are, the reasons why they do well is, because of the, financial power of having this large unpaid army of advocates. The other thing I'll say is that it feels great to work for a company, going back to my first comment on employees. It feels amazing to work for companies that have a lot of customer advocacy. It gives you that sense of purpose. Like, now I know why I'm here. We're adding real value to the world. But look at all these customers we're delighting, that they are helping us grow. It's such an empowering, exciting thing to be a part of. So I actually think it's the most important thing for entrepreneurs to do. I think the most important thing for entrepreneurs is to build advocates and mobilizing. Now, it all starts with having an amazing product and terrific service, and we don't actually get involved in that area. Right? We really only work with companies that already have a great product and service, and that's because we've learned the hard way that our product works really well for companies that are already delighting customers.
Right.
We don't work as well. We've had early in our history, we had a couple of customers who, frankly, weren't doing a great job, but they might have a handful of happy customers, and what they wanted us to do is help to give them a megaphone, and so essentially to make it look like they had a ton of advocates, even if they didn't. And honestly, we've learned that that's not a good business for us. That doesn't work very well. So we tend to work with companies that already do a great job of delighting customers, and we make sure they win. And you know what? Like, that feels great. It feels great to do that. It feels like we're doing good for the world because we're helping the good guys win.
I appreciate you saying that. I think how important it is for the employees. And, this is going to segue into us talking a bit about empathy, because I think a lot of time we spend is trying to go, often in marketing and sales, it had been outside in. And what I'm hearing from you is, no, it's from the inside out. It needs to be authentic. You're connected with your employees. And as you know, I've been doing some work in empathy-based marketing and selling, and how can help us connect with our customers and create better results. And I just wanted to ask you, how can empathy and what you're talking about in advocacy-based marketing, how do they connect from your perspective? And where do you see empathy really helping empower companies who are customer-centric and are really looking to do better?
Yeah, I love this work you're doing on empathy. I mean, with every year that goes by as an entrepreneur, I realize more that it's the number one skill, I think, that business leaders need to develop in order to win. And I think often it's thought of in an employee context, and for sure, like I've worked with a coach for the last 3 or 4 years, mainly working on developing, more my skills as a leader, which include being more empathetic, meaning truly and deeply understanding my employees in particular, feeling what they're feeling. But it extends way deeper than employees, and that's why I love the work you're doing about being empathetic for customers and understanding their experience. And in fact, this whole business that I'm doing came from a place of empathy in the beginning, because it was all about understanding what is the most desirable buying process for someone to go through.
Yes.
So if you think about the last amazing buying experience you've had, for something that wasn't just a commodity, but something you had to really think about. And chances are, right, that process that you went through had a number of trusted people, whether those were, other customers that you trusted, or that, a salesperson that you worked with did such a good job that you truly and deeply trusted that person. You trusted that person had your best interest in their heart. And chances are that trust and that transparency was just completely interwoven in that buying process that you had. And that's what I learned, right? That's what I learned when I was at Eloqua and trying to figure out, like, what was going on with some of these prospects that bought in 4 days instead of 4 months. And that experience had tons of advocacy that was all over it.
Yes.
And so if we want to truly feel what our buyers are feeling, we want to get, and here's the thing about, people talk about customer experience all the time. I think it's bandied about. I'm not sure some people even know what it means. Like, to me, customer experience is all about feeling. Like, it's all about the way people feel at different parts of their journey with you. And so if we want to make people feel great, want to make people feel like there's trust, then you've got to infuse that buying process with the power of authenticity, like authentic other customers. There's an immediate intersection right there. If you care about your buyers, if you care about their experience, and you want them to feel great when they're working with you, then you should probably talk less as a salesperson and as a marketer. And you should probably have more of their trusted, relevant peers do the talking for you. Not just because it's more effective, but because they like it. That's the experience that they really want more than anything. So I think there's a massive overlap between the ideas of empathy and advocacy.
I love that, and I agree with you. And as I've done research and understanding this perspective and thinking of customers and really how are they feeling, they want to know, how have you helped people like me? What has worked in others in my field, and how can I get better doing what I'm doing? And because there's that authentic, someone who's been in my space or my experience, and so much more we could probably unpack in this area. Talk about some actionable tips you might have for our listeners today who feel inspired. They realize they have advocates right now. They may not even use that term. I love the term advocate and what it means. So how can marketers start identifying and better supporting their customer advocates and or building or connecting with their advocate community?
Yeah, it's a great question. We produced an interesting piece of software to help mobilize advocates at scale, but it doesn't mean you have to do that. In fact, we think really every company in the world should be doing advocate marketing. And it may be as simple as just having a meal, like a couple times a year, with some of your best customers. And there's really no agenda there other than to get people together and to ask, how to improve, and maybe share a little bit about where you're going as a company. And, that alone can cost very little. We have these dinners all the time. It might cost $1,000, to get 8 people together at a nice restaurant and have like a little prix meal. And wow, it just makes a big impact. And because those people, your best customers, they want to impact your company, right? They want to help shape your company. In some cases, they may already feel like they're more part of your company than their company, because they believe so passionately in your ideas. And so by giving them an exclusive try to say, hey, this dinner is not just for any one of our customers, it's for our most special customers. not because you buy a lot from us either, by the way. Not because you buy a lot from us. It's not about purchasing. It's because you get it. It's because you believe. And we think that your ideas are leading edge, and there's things that, your ideas are going to be ones that everyone else is going to subscribe to. So we want to spend more time listening to you. We want to take care of you. That message will always be well received. It's very inexpensive, and it's got a very high ROI. So just starting there is a great place to start. For companies who already are doing that, I know a lot of companies are already doing that before we start talking to them. It makes sense. People believe in advocacy, and they believe in it. They find our message, it appeals to them. A next step is to centralize your advocacy with one person or process. A lot of the companies that we work with, before we start working with them, they have 4 or 5 different people in the organization that are all doing little bits and pieces of advocate marketing in their own way. They might have one person in charge of referrals, another person in charge of talking to customers. And the problem there is you're really missing out on a lot of potential advocacy. That same person that can be a reference for you is also willing to speak on stage or retweet a couple things. So if you have one person, a point person who's in charge of advocacy for your company, you'll get a lot more. You can get 3 or 4 times as much without spending any more money. In fact, you could actually end up saving a lot of time and money and frustration because you centralize that process. And again, that's actually a very empathetic thing, right? Because what you're saying is, what I care about more than the types of things that advocates do? We care about the advocates themselves. We actually care about people. We care about their experience. We want their experience to be great. And so by having one person in your company that's in charge of that, I think that is showing a lot of respect and appreciation for these very important people. If you just do those 2 things alone, without buying any fancy software, you'll get a lot more of this, very valuable advocacy for your company, and you've seen it be quite transformational. And then maybe you'll be ready to have a really scaled up advocate program, and that's what we do at Influitive. So we create communities where, so these are sort of virtual places on the internet and on mobile, where you can invite your advocates in and make them feel like $1 million and let them know how they can help you, get them to interact with each other. We have about 300 great companies that are doing that, and they're enjoying the experience. But again, you don't have to do anything fancy. Just get people together and show some appreciation. You'll get a lot of value out of it.
That's terrific, Mark, and thank you for the action points. I was going to ask you one last question before we closed, and I just want to ask you, what's a question you wished I asked but hadn't?
That's a question you should have asked me and haven't. Maybe something about, the future. What do you, that's often a good one, is to bring out the crystal ball and to see what we see in the future in marketing and that sort of thing.
That would be great. So what do you see in the future right now for B2B marketing or selling as far as macro trends?
Yeah, so a few things to comment on. I mean, one which I've sort of alluded to in this conversation was around the rise of customer experience and the role that marketing is going to have to play in customer experience. And one of the things you'll notice, some of the best companies that we have here, particularly in the West, are ones that are obsessed about customer experience. And I think as you have more buyers that are, they're inundated with emails and websites and all sorts of stuff like that, which I'm partially responsible for in my role at Eloqua. I think that marketers are going to need to have some control over the customer experience in the future, because that is going to be the main source of where their best leads are going to come from and their ability to convert those leads. And so we see with our customers, which tend to be on the leading edge of the curve, where marketing and customer success are starting to merge a little bit. There's this. It's very analogous to how sales and marketing started to come together in my Eloqua days. Under the idea of a common definition of a lead, right?
Yes.
So sales and marketing got together, and you've done a lot of writing on that. I've learned much from you over the years on that. There's an analogous thing that's happening now, where customer success and marketing and product are coming together to define what the optimal customer experience is. And that is a big, big move. And marketers that are able to get on that and understand this new language of customer experience and be able to drive it are going to do very well over the next few years. I think that's one big trend. I do think that this idea of marketing by proxy is huge. It's a huge thing, and these are skills that most marketers do not have today. Marketers are, they now are good at running these cross-function, multimodal, nurturing style, campaigns to drive leads sort of thing. And that, the ability to do that has been really dominant over the last, 10 years. That's changing as buyers are becoming, kind of inundated with this stuff. So the ability to get others to do the marketing for you and learning those skills are going to be pretty important. And because there's such little knowledge in the area, we actually have quite an education effort out there. You go to influitive.com and check out our resources page. There's lots of educational material as we're trying to train this next generation of marketers and how to think this way. Instead of thinking about, how do I bombard people in order to get my way, it's how do I find the right people who are relevant and trusted, and how do I get them to carry our message for me? And I think that's going to be a big deal. And third, everyone's talking about machine learning and all that these days, and I think it's probably going to create just as big of an impact. I think AI and machine learning is probably at the very top of the hype curve right now.
Right.
And so I think you'll probably what happens to a lot of these type things, which is, 3 years from now, everyone's going to say, wow, I don't know what that was all about. I guess that was all hyped up. But then in 10 years from now, people go, wow, that actually really was a huge change. So I think it's definitely worth tracking what's going on in that technology, and we're certainly spending quite a bit of time playing around with it here. But yeah, some of the things I see for marketers and actually sellers too. And there's a lot of sales professionals who listen to your podcast. I think empathy is just as important, if not more so, for sellers, and so is advocacy. So is mobilizing your proxies if you're in the sales profession as well. So I think there's a lot of parallels.
Well, thanks for coming on again, Mark. I always learn every time we talk or interact. And what's the best way for readers or listeners to get in touch with you?
Sure, a number of ways. There's so I'm on Twitter all the time. So it's at Mark Organ, all one word over there. I'm also available on email. I'm mark@influitive.com. That's Mark with a K. And our website is www.influitive.com. That's like intuitive, but with an FL in it, Influitive. And it would be great to have people to stop by and check out our educational resources, and love to see what I can do to help people along in their journey towards empathy and advocacy.
Well, fantastic. Thanks again for coming on. And for our listeners, I'll be posting links to some of the things that Mark shared today here at the b2bleadblog.com. And you can check back as we have more updates. Thanks again.